Slasher films had gotten stale, from Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger to Chucky. Scream came up with the first of its kind self-aware movie, but not in the most obvious way, with a sprinkle of originality. You know what? Let's talk about it.
Surprise, Sydney.
How did Scream achieve this? Well, let's start with the opening scene, which is one of the most iconic and memorable scenes in horror history. We meet Casey Baker, played by Drew Barrymore, who is home alone and gets a phone call from a mysterious stranger. He asks her,
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
and then proceeds to quiz her on a horror trivia, threatening to kill her and her boyfriend if she gets the answers wrong.
Do this, I can't.
Name the killer in Halloween.
No.
Come on, it's your favorite scary movie, remember? He had a wife.
The scene is a masterpiece in building tension, suspense, and fear as we watch Casey try to outsmart the killer, while also being tormented by his voice and his presence. The scene also gets the tone for the rest of the movie as it introduces the main themes and elements of Scream, the self-referential humor, the meta-commentary on horror tropes, the subversion of expectations, and the brutal violence. Brutal, okay, it wasn't that brutal because they had to chop down the brutality in order to make the movie mainstream, because they had actually suppressed the movie. If you actually read the Wikipedia page, and I felt bad, is that Wes Craven had to cut out a lot of brutal scenes in this movie just to make it, make it a bit more appealing, which is devastating, and it actually affects creativity. I just don't like that aspect. I just don't like it, right? So, yeah, going back to the point is that the opening scene also establishes the main premise of Scream. There is a killer on the loose in the town of Woodsboro who wears a ghost face mask and a black cloak, and who targets teenagers who are fans of horror movies. The killer seems to have a motive related to the past of Sydney Prescott, the main protagonist, played by Neve Campbell. Sydney is a survivor of a traumatic event, the murder of her mother, Maureen Prescott, a year ago by a man named Cotton Weary, who is now in prison. Sydney is also a virgin, which according to the rules of horror movies means she has a better chance of surviving. But as we all see, Scream is not a movie that follows the rules. Scream also asks us, who are the real victims and who are the real villains? Scream is a movie that blurs the lines between good and evil, between reality and fiction, between innocence and guilt. Scream is a movie that makes us question our own morality, our own choices, our own actions. Scream is a movie that makes us scream, not in fear, but in laughter, surprise, shock, and awe. And that's why, guys, if you haven't watched this movie, consider doing so. And if you have already, I recommend you to rewatch it again and again and again and again. Because Scream is a movie that never gets old, that never gets boring, that never gets predictable. Scream is a movie that always keeps you on the edge of your seat, that always makes you think, that always makes you feel. Scream is a movie that you can never get enough of, that you can never forget, that you can never escape. It's a movie that will make you scream for the right reasons. You know what? Let's talk about it.
We can talk about it. Let's talk about it. This is so confusing.
But Scream is not about the original movie. It's all about the sequels, the prequels, the reboots, the recalls. It's about the franchise, the legacy, the fandom, the meta-narrative. It's how Scream evolved with the times and how it reflected the changes in the horror genre and the culture at large. Scream 2 was released just a year after the first one, and it took the meta-commentary on the next level. It's a sequel about sequels and how they are usually bigger, bloodier, and more complicated than the originals. It's also introduced by the concept of the copycat killer, who mimics the actions of the previous Ghostface, as the events of the first movie were turned into a movie within a movie called Stab. Scream 2 also expanded on the scope of the story, as Sydney and her friends went to college, faced new threats and new allies. So Scream 2 also had actually a shocking twist, whereby it revealed that the killer was Billy's mother, Mrs. Loomis, who wanted to revenge for her son's death and who had teamed up with one of Sydney's classmates, Mickey, a film student obsessed with horror movies and serial killers. Scream 3 came out 3 years later, and it was the conclusion of the original trilogy. It was a trilogy about trilogies, and how they are usually darker, deeper, and more personal than the previous installments. It also explored the origins of the Ghostface mask and the backstory of Sydney's mother, Maureen, who had a secret past as a Hollywood actress and was involved in a scandal that led to her murder. Scream 3 also moved the setting to Los Angeles, where Sydney and her friends had to deal with the cast and the crew of Stab 3, the latest sequel of the movie franchise based on their lives. Scream 3 also had the most surprising twist, as it revealed that the killer was actually Roman Bridger, the director of Stab 3 and Sydney's long-lost half-brother, who was the mastermind behind the whole saga and who had manipulated Billy and Stu into killing Maureen and starting the Ghostface murders. Scream 4 came out 11 years after Scream 3, and it was a reboot of the franchise. It was a reboot about reboots, and how they are usually a way to revive a dying genre and to appeal to a new generation of fans. It also commented on the rise of social media and the obsession with fame and violence in the modern world. It also returned to the original setting of Woodsboro, where Sydney and her friends had to face a new wave of Ghostface killings, targeting Sydney's young cousin Jill and her friends. Scream 4 also had a brutal twist in the franchise, as it revealed that the killer was Jill herself, who wanted to become the new Sydney, making sense of the reboot. So she wanted to make a reboot by killing Sydney and her being now the new Sydney, right? Who had orchestrated the murders with the help of her friends Charlie, a horror movie geek, and a member of the cinema club. Scream 5, which came out 11 years after Scream 4, and it was a recall of the franchise. A recall about recalls. So if you don't understand what a recall is, I recommend you to watch the first video. Right, it actually, I think I make a better job in explaining what a recall is. And so these recalls are actually usually a way to honor the legacy of the original and to connect with the old and new fans. It also addressed the issues of toxic fandom and the dangers of nostalgia and entitlement in the horror community. Scream also introduced a new setting, the town of Woodsboro Heights, where Sydney and her friends had to protect a new group of protagonists led by Sam Carpenter, a young woman who turned out to be the daughter of Billy Loomis and who had inherited his psychotic tendencies. It actually had a twist whereby the killer was Richie, Sammy's boyfriend, who was a huge fan of the Stab movies and who wanted to recreate the original Scream and to make Sam his partner in crime. And then Scream 6, which comes out a year after Scream 5, and it was a cult about cults. It's how they usually a way to worship the icons of the genre and follow their teachings and commands. It also explored on the themes of fanaticism, devotion, and sacrifice in the horror world. Scream 6 also brought back some familiar faces like Kirby Reed, who survived the events of Scream 4 and who had become a horror expert and a podcaster, and also Heather Matarazzo, who reprised her role as Martha Mix, Randy's sister, and who had inherited his video collection and his knowledge of the roles. The twist actually of Scream 6 wasn't that interesting to me. I think it's one of the weakest twists that I've watched. I felt like they had nothing to bring as a twist in this movie, in a way that the twist was whereby the father of Richie, who was the killer in the previous movie, now wanted revenge for killing who? For killing their son. And I felt like it was more of like a copycat of Scream 2, whereby Scream 2, the mother of Billy Loomis, came out and wanted to kill Sidney for killing his what? For killing his son. So this was more of a copycat. I felt it's the weakest. Yeah. And then for Scream 7, let's wait and see. My thoughts on Scream 7, what I do believe Scream 7 may be, I don't know. I'm actually still thinking about it, about what the overall theme of Scream 7 is going to be. Though for the killer I have some names. One of them is the popular names. I have a feeling that Stu Macher, who was the accomplice of Billy Loomis in Scream 1, may likely come back. Based on some clues, I think there is a certain video that I watched on YouTube that actually gave reasons as to why Stu Macher is still alive and may be a killer at one point in time. And probably, I don't know if I remember, I may link that video here, and I may link the video for you in the description and maybe show you a screenshot of the video. Is that it was interesting. This lady actually gave a reason, and I actually bought the reason, and I felt like Stu may likely come back in Scream 7. And even what makes it interesting is that Kevin Williamson, at the time of recording this video, Kevin Williamson is the director. Sidney Campbell is coming back, so there is even a higher reason for Stu to also be the killer. Because in Scream 6 it was unlikely for Stu, because Stu doesn't care about these new characters. Why would Stu need to kill the daughter of his friend? Right? So, but now there is a greater reason for Stu trying to kill Sidney at this point. And I don't know what Scream 7 is going to play around, because at least we have seen that all the Scream movies had something to play around with. Scream 1 was just Scream. Scream 2 was playing around the sequels. Scream 3 the trilogies. Scream 4 a reboot. Scream 5 a recall. Now Scream 6 was also a bit complicated. I wasn't sure what it was playing around with. But Scream 7, I'm actually excited to see what this time they have. The good thing, since Kevin Williamson is involved into the creative process, is that, so I'm pretty excited to see Scream 7 despite of all the controversies, the catastrophes, and all these bad things that happened. I'm pretty excited to see what is likely to happen. Yeah, so okay guys, that's it. If you've liked this video, then a sub to this channel won't hurt at all, because all we talk about is movies on this platform. And if you don't find Scream scary, then what is your favorite scary movie?
We can talk about it. Let's talk about it. This is so confusing.